This video is made possible by Brilliant. Learn complex topics simply for 20% off by being one of the first 200 people to sign up at brilliant.org/RealLifeLore. Math and numbers can be scary, but some numbers are more scary than others to a lot of people. Recently, I got kinda bored and decided to look into creating a single number or sequence of numbers that the most people around the world would be uncomfortable with or just not like. Different cultures around the world consider different numbers to be terrifying for different reasons. So, whatever frighteningly unlucky number we create needs to be maximized on cultural fears across the world. 13 is a spooky number in the West, 17 is scary in Italy, 4 is frightening across East Asia, 39 is terrifying in Afghanistan, and 666 is spooky pretty much across the world. So, the number that you saw in the thumbnail of this video is based on all of these ones, but the big question is, why are these numbers considered abjectly terrifying to some, but are completely harmless to others? What makes the most cursed number sequence in the world so, well, cursed? Let's begin with 4 and continue up from there in numerical order. 4 is a number that strikes terror in the hearts of many across China, Korea, Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore. The reason why is fairly simple, but you have to understand the Chinese, Korean, and Japanese languages in order to really get it. In Mandarin Chinese, the word for the number 4 is se. The word for the concept of dead or death is almost identically pronounced as se, and so it's very easy while speaking Chinese to accidentally speak the phrase death while you're attempting to speak the number 4. The taboo is present in both Malaysia and Singapore as well because of the modern large Chinese populations in both countries. And the reason is the same in both the Korean and Japanese languages as well, for both words sounding almost identical or at the very least highly similar. So because of this, the number 4 has been fairly taboo in Chinese and East Asian culture for centuries now. Mentioning the number 4 around a sick relative or in a hospital is particularly avoided. Gifts in groups of 4 are sometimes unwelcome. Elevators in apartment buildings will often skip the 4th floor and go directly from floor 3 to floor 5. In Hong Kong, some apartment buildings skip all the floors from 40 to 49 in order to skip all of the 40s. Although this is more likely to advertise a building with a higher floor count than from any fears of the supernatural. In Cantonese Chinese, 14 and 24 are often considered to be even worse than the base 4 because translated, 14 sounds more akin to will certainly die, while 24 sounds more like easy to die. In many Chinese neighborhoods, there is a noticeable real estate price drop on properties with the number 4 at the beginning or the end of their addresses. Neighborhoods have removed 4 from their street names and become more profitable as a result. But perhaps the most extreme example for fear of the number 4 in Chinese culture comes from the 2008 Olympic Games that were hosted in Beijing. 8 years previously in 2000, Beijing bid to host the games then and lost. But they declined to apply to host the next games in 2004 and opted instead to wait around to apply again in 2008. Part of the speculation for why they did this was out of the cultural fear and apprehension surrounding the number 4 inside of China. But of course, there's other numbers that are equally feared in other parts of the world as well. Let's move on to 13, which is generally more feared in the Western world and particularly in Anglo-Saxon or English-speaking countries. There's a lot of theories for how 13 came to be so infamous in the West, like the Judas theory, which suggests that the disciple Judas was the last man to sit with Christ at the Last Supper, therefore being the 13th member at the table and the one who ultimately betrayed Jesus to the Romans. On Friday the 13th in October of 1307, King Philip IV of France infamously ordered the arrests of the Knights Templar. So for whatever reason, the number 13, and especially Friday the 13th, is considered so unfortunate in the West that an estimated 17 to 21 million Americans suffer from legitimate fears about the date. But before you denounce these millions of Americans for believing in pure superstition, consider the events surrounding Apollo 13, the third manned mission to the moon. It was launched on April 11th, 1970 at 1313. and 2 days later, on April the 13th, suffered a catastrophic oxygen tank explosion on board that forced the mission to abort and return back to Earth. But 13 isn't the only number in the teens with a lot of infamy. There's also 17, which is primarily feared in Italy. There's a long history of hatred for the number 17 here. In ancient times, the followers of Pythagoras in southern Italy hated the number because it was located right between 16 and 18, perfect representations of 4x4 and 3x6 quadrilaterals. Pythagoras' followers also supposedly murdered a guy for showing the world that the square root of 2 was an irrational number. But back to more about 17. In the Old Testament of the Bible, it is recorded that the universal flood that swept the world began on the 17th day of the second month. The term vixi, Latin for I lived, was a common inscription on tombstones of the deceased. However, VIXI is also an anagram for XVII, which is 17 in Roman numerals, which led to an association of the number with the dead. At the Battle of Teutoburg Forest in the year 9 CE, the German tribes annihilated the Roman 17th, 18th, and 19th legions. From then on, 17 was never used by the Romans again to ever denote another legion. Friday the 17th is often considered more unlucky in Italy than the 13th, and there are some Alitalia flights which have removed the 17th row of seats on board their planes. Moving up in the curse numbers, we arrive on 39, which is particularly seen as bad luck in Afghanistan. Without clear origins for why, 39 has somehow become lodged in the popular Afghan imagination as a symbol of pimping and prostitution. It's said to have initially become infamous as a result of a well-known pimp in the city of Herat, who became known as 39 because of the registration number on his expensive car and the address of his apartment. In the Pashtun language, saying the number 39 is also similar sounding to dead cow, which is a well-known slang term in the country for a pimp. Whatever the origins, 39 is such a problem in the country that vehicles bearing the number in their registration plates are so massively undesirable that they're almost impossible to sell. 2011 was a particularly problematic year because after the Persian New Year in March, according to the Iranian calendar, the year was now 1390. So the Afghan government began issuing registration plates beginning with 39. And as a result, many drivers simply just refused to register their vehicles that year and risk financial penalties rather than risk the stigma of driving around in a vehicle with 39 on it. During the 2010 Afghan parliamentary elections, one candidate had the misfortune of being listed 39th on the ballot, and upon being harassed about it in the streets, had his guards open fire into the crowd, which killed 2 people. But the next and final big cursed number is, of course, 666. 666, the devil's number, supposedly. The number's infamy originates in the Bible, Book of Revelations, chapter 13, verse 18, which states in the King James Version of the Bible, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Much has been made about this phrase throughout history, with many people associating the number with the devil or the Antichrist. A good competitor for my most cursed number is another number that was created by mathematician Harvey Dubner, which reads as 1 The number is known as Belphegor's prime and contains numerous superstitious elements. The number 666 at the heart of the prime is, of course, the well-known symbol of the beast. The number is then surrounded on either side by 13 zeros, and it's all 31 total digits in length, which reads as 13 backwards. Other numbers may be considered scary to different countries and peoples as well. In China, the numbers 89, 6, and 4 are each banned search terms on Chinese search engines because of the date 1989-06-04, the date of the Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing. With all of these numbers and their infamies now explained, let's then create the most cursed number with the most widespread hate and censorship across the world. In my opinion, I think this number sequence has to be 89, 6, 4, 13, 17, 39, 666, and 4 again, maybe followed up by the square root of 2 just for good measure for the Pythagoreans. And there you go. But numbers don't have to be so frightening. Numbers and mathematics in general can be intimidating and seem like too much to handle, believe me, I know. But Brilliant can seriously help you out. When I was still in school, I struggled a lot with every STEM subject because it was difficult for me to pay attention in class or to understand what my teachers were trying to tell me. But Brilliant continues to help me understand more complicated subjects than I ever could have imagined back then. Even if you're an absolute beginner, you can start out with classes like Mathematical Fundamentals or Pre-Algebra and build your knowledge base up from there to more advanced subjects later like 3D geometry or calculus. Brilliant breaks down complicated subjects like these into easy to follow, bite-sized chunks that'll engage you with interactive challenges, clear steps, storytelling, and problems to solve. And if learning about pure math isn't really your thing, then you can still learn how to do a whole bunch of other things, like how to build a solar panel, how to build a neural network, or even just getting started with coding or computer science. You can even do all of this on the go in small chunks with their mobile app, or if you're tight for time, you can complete their daily challenges to learn a little bit new every day in your small free moments. Whatever STEM subject you're interested in or maybe struggling with, and regardless of your experience level, there's something for you on Brilliant. So please be sure to go check them out and sign up for free. And if you're one of the first 200 people who go to brilliant.org/reallifelore or click the link in my description, you'll get 20% off of your annual premium subscription. And as always, thank you for watching.